Are we waiting for anyone or should we start the meeting? Hello.
Member that's not present is Mr. Stump.
Okay.
But it's 1:59, so.
I'll give him a minute. Sure.
Can you guys see me now? Because I can see myself for the first time.
Yes. Yes, we can.
How about that?
Yeah.
Board member Eisenband has not joined either.
Oh, that's correct. Sorry about that. Thank you, Teresa.
You're
What
welcome.
was that? Say that again. What did you say? I'm sorry.
Board member Eisenband, we're waiting on him as well.
Neil.
Hang on.
I learned something. I put it on my TV at the other end of the room and I muted it. Now I can see everybody.
There you go.
You're very lucky.
David, could you not see everybody on your screen?
I see 4 across the bottom.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, there's a gallery view in the
Yeah.
upper left-hand corner. You can select, you might be on the speaker view, but if you click where it says, you can click the gallery view, and then on your PC, it'll show everyone.
I've got participants. Let's see.
Yeah, if you put, I don't know.
There we go. We got it.
Got it? Yeah.
It'll be easier to chair the meeting that way.
You guys give me the go when you want to start, when you don't want to wait any longer, okay?
You have a quorum, so you can proceed. It's 2:01.
All right, we'll give another 2 minutes to see if they may have just trouble joining. So.
Okay.
All right, I think we're gonna move forward. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the virtual Financial Advisory Board regular meeting, Thursday, July 9th, 2020 at 2 p.m. Kindly silence any cell phones you may have on. Thank you. Town clerk, roll call, please.
Okay, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Janelle Thompson, who's going to be doing the roll call.
Very good.
I'll proceed.
Member Riani? Board member Riani?
Rihanna.
Here. Can you hear? Okay. Member Greenwald?
Present?
Member Stump? Member Moore?
Present.
Member Eisenman? Member Kornfeld?
Present.
Chairperson Stern?
Present. Thank you very much. Okay, we can all now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag,
Flag.
United States.
States of America.
to the republic,
For which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
liberty,
and justice for all.
Boy, I'm glad I remembered to put my pants on. That was good. Okay. Public comments, town clerk, did we receive any requests for public comments?
We actually didn't receive any public comments.
I'm sorry?
We did not receive any public
Yeah,
comments.
thank you very much. Okay, hearing that, we'll go to approval of minutes. Are there any corrections for the minutes of October 24th, 2019 or January 16th, 2020? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you very much. Okay, new business. First of all, we'd like to welcome Ron Remy to the board. Ron's been, we recognize he's been a lot of the meetings, the town meetings, and has questions, and he's a excellent addition to the board. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
The first item before the board is the chairman of the board of the FAB. According to resolution 19-029, advisory board and committee appointment process policy, section 9, it should be common practice that no member shall serve as chair until he or she served in 1 full year or the advisory board, unless no existing member is willing to serve as a chairperson or vice chairperson. Is there a nomination for chair?
I nominate David Stern.
I second.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Nominations are closed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, reluctantly, I accept. Secondly, nomination for vice chair. I must read this again. According to resolution 19-029, advisory board and committees appointment process policy, section 9, it should be common practice that no member shall serve until he or she is served for a full year, unless no existing member is willing to be his chairperson or vice chairperson. That being said, I would like to put in nomination Natasha Moore for vice chair.
Second.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll put that to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Not even you, Natasha. Okay, thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Next, we'll come to the budget presentation for upcoming fiscal year 2020-21. I'm going to refer this to Director Matthew Lala. Hopefully, you've already seen part of this at the last town meeting, but he will take us through it, and we'll entertain, I assume, some questions.
Thank you, Chair Stern. I'm going to actually turn it over to Marshall and let him do most of what he did last Tuesday at the commission meeting, and it'll be very much the same as what was done for the commission.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Chairperson Stern. So I will give the same presentation. With it being a smaller group, maybe some have already heard the presentation from last Tuesday. We could kind of take it whatever direction you want to, if you want to stop on each slide or each segment, and we can have discussions. I'm sure there's some items that the board members may want to jump off on to get a little more detail into those conversations or topics. So with that being said, we'll start with an overview on our budget. So what I would like to start and frame this again is we have yet another strategic budget that we're hoping to be approved by the end of September, that continues to work towards protecting our unique sense of place. The commission has directed myself and Teresa, we're working on a strategic objectives and projects list, get that to the commission, and eventually that will roll into the budget document. But the highlight that I would want to say is we're in strong financial condition. I'll say it one more time because I don't want anyone to mistake what I said. We are in a strong financial position. And that is a good thing to know as we move into potentially some times of uncertainty over the next couple of fiscal years, predominantly driven by the COVID pandemic. So with that being said, though, we have the resources and we're in a strong financial position to weather that storm to a point that if we can go to the next slide, Teresa, I know you're behind the scenes doing all this for us. The budget Matt and I put together.
Excuse me, would you prefer questions are asked during or waiting till the end of the presentation?
I will follow your lead, sir.
Okay, then we'll start out. If someone raises their hand during the presentation, we'll stop for the question, if that's okay.
Yeah, and I have it on gallery view too, so I'll try to do my best. If I see some looks of interest or inquiry, then I will also slow down and give an opportunity for that. But with that being said, in a strong financial position, Matt and I put together a budget where we're going to actually potentially see, this is before the commission, and your opinions definitely matter, and your advice is what they're looking for while we go through this process, is a slight decrease in the millage rate is being proposed. Yes, I said that, a slight decrease in the millage rate when most of our surrounding neighbors and communities will probably be vexed with the conversation of increasing their millages. So basically we're seeing it's a very, very slight millage decrease, and that's mostly on the debt service millage because the amortization schedule for our 5 debt issues is less than last year. So our debt millage needs to come down to match that obligation. While we are the second slowest growth in property values as estimated by the property appraiser, we're still seeing growth of $173,000 on the tax roll for next fiscal year. So we are seeing some growth. Right now we're at about 2.46% is the estimate from the property appraiser. The only community with a lower growth rate projection is Manalapan. So what we're recommending is the gap that between that's going to be there between the revenues and expenses is about $208,000. Our recommendation is to use reserves to fill that gap at this point in time. The reason why we're comfortably suggesting that, and if you again watch the meeting on Tuesday, Matt's going to, after this presentation, talk to you about our CAFR or our audit, our comprehensive financial report, whereby at the closeout of 19, we increased our net position by $552,000, which we added to the unassigned reserves and the fund balance. So if we recall, that budget actually had the commission pledging $690,000 of reserves to fill that budget, and we turned that completely upside down and actually added $552,000 to our budget. So kudos to my leadership team to really identify points of expense and really squeeze that down to what we really needed. So we're recommending the use of some of those reserves that we've added for next fiscal year to balance that budget about $208,000. That's probably going to go up. And the reason why I would say that is, as we will talk through this conversation, the commission or the FAB or others may recommend some other types of projects to be explored for next year, which then would increase our expense side, and we would need to use some reserves for that. Right now, if anything new added would require the additional use of reserves. What you also see is, which I'm sure will be a point of conversation, fire rescue budget of approximately $313,000 increase. We're using a very conservative 7%. As you may have heard and read and spoken with others, they have asked for an increase of around 10.3% to handle the addition of 4 more firefighters. At this point, the town board is not inclined to move forward with that contract amendment. They are currently reaching out previously through the vice mayor and then forward through the mayor to have conversations with the Delray City Commission so they understand our position of not wishing to take on those additional costs for various fiscal and service related reasons. Commissioner Stern?
Yeah, just a question on on what you just talked about in the fire budget. The base unit for the amount for the 7% increase, is that before the true up, after the true up? I'm just interested to know, what that increase is based upon, what's the base amount is, and how it relates, because in looking at the sheet that we got over the years, the average increase is 4%. So I'm interested to know how that was, what the base that was arrived on.
Very good question. So we basically put 7% on this year's operating budget. So it's before the current fiscal year's true up. So we took this year's, or our current operating year's bill projection from Delray and added 7% to that as a placeholder, because we will be working through some of these details over the next few months, hopefully to get a better number that's not 7. We just picked 7, recognizing some of the discussions we had last year and concerns over their growth in their pension fund and some of those other cost escalators that we don't really have access or understanding to. So we just went a simple 7% as a placeholder, just to understand that there is an increase in cost in the fire service. And we'll find out a better number as we progress through, as the commission progresses through their conversations with the city of Delray to see where we end up.
I just like to remind you that when we had the presentation from Delray, they agreed that they were going to try to furnish us interim numbers or year-to-date numbers to help us figure out where we're going to end up. Have we had any communication or any indication from them how they feel they're going to end up at this point in time?
That's a good question. I have some answers. I'm just working for the right words.
Okay.
Yes, we've had communications. They're a little bit in disarray at the moment, as you may have read in the paper. So we're not getting a lot of quick response from them at the moment. And we are working to get exactly that, Chairperson Stern, to get those interim numbers, which will lead me in just a second that if you look at the bottom of this slide where we have capital projects, the commission carried on a directive established by the FAB last year and approved a project. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little echo, but so they approved a project on Tuesday, 2 days ago, whereby they put a placeholder for an additional $75,000 to do a forensic audit, if you will. I don't know if forensic is the right word, but to do an audit of the contract and the expenses over since the contract term started. And then to also begin to look at alternative fire service options that are available to Highland Beach. So they went ahead and took formal action on putting that in place so we can start to see some better numbers and start to get a better understanding. And then the commission is going to work on the collaborative issues that we're currently having and improving the partnership in some sense.
Just to comment on that part, I think that's a positive step, and we'd be happy to look at those numbers when we get them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as the tradition has been, when we get these items and the audit results and all that and the fire service model, they will be coming to the FAB for review and opinion. So you guys will be directly in the fold as we move forward with that. They also established a 6-month timeline on that, which I always appreciate to know expectations as we go to deliver these things. So within 6 months, we should have the results of the audit and the study of alternatives. That's basically the guidelines that I've been provided at this point. It'll return to the commission in June, but they gave me that guidance on Tuesday to move forward with it. Also, you'll see in here funding of salaries and benefits. Both collective bargaining agreements are up for consideration this year. The internal collective bargaining team has been meeting with the PBA, making some progress there. And we'll be addressing the FOP and the general employee. So we use some conservative placeholders in personnel services or personal services as it's written out to kind of go as a guidepost as we move through our talks. Next slide. Again, we still, on the capital project side, we still have crosswalks are still in there. I know that there's some questions. If Mr. Bowden is listening, yes, crosswalks are still in play. We're just trying to come up with a different mechanism to deliver those that fits within our budget scope or within the charter limits of 350. We're trying to find what I would call is owner installed devices. So we're trying to look at that model of delivery versus a design bid build format that we tried last time that gave really high cost. Also, unfortunately, our roof here at Town Hall is a continual leak. It's kind of given up on us and it's time for replacement. Every time it rains, we find a series of new leaks. The last few were in the finance department. I don't like to have records destroyed by water, so we had to move a roof project in there, but the budget does account for both of these projects. Next slide.
Oh, before we go to that
Before you
slide, can I ask the floor for a minute, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, absolutely.
Marshall, I saw the presentation you made and we could have ran it. How many saw his presentation at the board meeting last week, besides myself?
I did.
Dave Stern,
Okay.
yes.
So I want to stop here because these are the key items in the budget, and we'll go through the slides one by one because that's important. I want to step back on the millage rate proposal.
Sure.
We last year had the same situation, which you said resolved itself on the real numbers. When the true up came in, we came out ahead, even though there was $500,000 shortfall in the budget. My background in budgeting is a budget has to tie in, not say I'm putting in a shortfall number without an explanation saying, well, it's last year we made up for it. We expect to do it again this year. The slight reduction, I did a quick calculation. Maybe I'm wrong on my, maybe Matthew could address that. If we kept the same rate, we gain, of the 208,000 would drop to about 160,000. Not a big deal, but we're still left with this gap. As you said, we're in great financial shape. And to show that we have a shortfall in our budget, we're in great shape. This is what I said a year ago when we talked about the 500,000 at a financial meeting. I'm not in favor of that, and maybe we'll talk about it later, but I just didn't want to get past the slide because every item on here is a key indicator and a key piece of the budget. I must say we're in great financial shape, and I've said this before over the last 6 years. David, I hope you don't mind us. By the way, this will be most likely my last meeting. This is the end of my 6 years, and I have to take a year off. So maybe
You just took away my, you just took away my closing report.
Oh, well.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to get everything I can in while I still can. I really don't see a need to show a negative 200,000. All it takes is everybody, which they're going to do during the meetings over the next few weeks, sharpen the pencil and find the $200,000 out of $12 million of expenses, so to show a balanced budget. It doesn't mean much in dollars, but it means much. It means something in presentation. The other thing which I heard on both of the meetings of the commission was the strong feeling that COVID-19 will not have a significant impact on our tax roll. I'm a conservative financial manager, and I think it's time to maybe take a step back before we make a statement like that. And that goes to other things within the budget, which when we get to it, it's not a big number, but let me hold that off. So on the first bullet point, I'm not in favor of that. I'm in favor of using the same rate as last year, which would lower this 208,000 at least. An additional taxes of 173, we project at this point. I can't argue that because I know by talking to realtors, yes, the market for us is very hot. Even in my building, even condos at our price level, two just sold for more than the asking value. So yes, for this year, I think we're in good shape, but COVID could have an impact on us. And saying we are in good financial shape, that is very true, but it could turn. just to make that comment. So that takes care of the first two bullets. Next, on the fire rescue, I did read the article in the Star regarding the $450,000 that comes down to that isn't, and I did listen to what the compensation was of our board. At this point, the increase of $300,000 for the fire budget is fine, but if Delray gets their way, it could be $480,000, I think is the number, to add the 4 people to our staff, which I don't understand, in the Highland Beach Fire Rescue Department. So I know this budget's going to have a lot of work. You're going to have meetings, which hopefully I could attend with the people involved with the day-to-day and really number crunching, and maybe to smooth it out a little bit. So a 7% increase of 313, strictly a number based on where we are today. I'm not arguing the number, but it could be higher. And it depends on how we do dealing with Delray. On the funding of the salaries, the CBA, we don't know yet. Hopefully by the time we have to publish our budget, we'll know. Unions have a way of rearing their, excuse the expression, their heads. And I was going to say ugly heads, but that's not a nice thing to say. So we really don't know. History says it's going to be reasonable. History says it's not going to impact us much, if at all. And 1% for today, I think, is fine. And the same with the, I'm saying for as of now for the fire rescue, the 7% is fine, but that could go up, but we'll know better in the next 4 to 6 weeks, before September 30th. The healthcare insurance increase of 10%. I remember we were very pleased last year with the job that was done by Matthew and the crew. When I was sat in the meeting and I heard no increase, I couldn't believe my ears because I'm used to 15% increase a year in my companies. To hear no increase, they did a great job with the benefits. Everybody came out ahead or somewhat where they were before with benefits. There might have been some adjustment in co-pays or deductibles, but nothing major, and we came out with no increase. So by saying 10% this year, that's okay, because I would expect a 10%. I can't believe we have 2 years with no increase unless we want to take some benefits away from our employees. So I'm fine with that. The town hall roof, the town hall was reconstructed. The heavy we spent, that was a major problem we had because they spent more than, I forgot the millions of dollars without getting proper approval. We got a slap on our wrist from Palm Beach on that. We moved forward. But I believe there should be a warranty on the town hall roof. Do you want to mention anything about that? Was that looked into, Marshall, or there's no?
Yeah, this, as part of that renovation project, they didn't re-roof the building.
The roof was not done.
Spots around entrances, but they didn't redo the whole roof. So we're still on the roof. I guess Pat was telling me we're about 20, 25 years into this roof.
Okay.
And it's like,
You answered my question. I thought it was all part of the building. All right, thank you. I want to stop there. I'll have more questions as we go through the slides, which I think is important to go through each one because they're very, very good grand view slides, not game buried. Also, the other comment on the overall budget is that it's $12 million of expenses. I believe that's the number. I say 80–90% of that is payroll. And that makes it fairly good to do a budget without much of a problem because unless you're hiring 50 people or the unions ask for a 50% increase, it won't happen. So focusing on the payroll and payable benefits is 80–90%, I would say, of the total budget. So I'll stop there. I'll have more questions as we go through the slides, but thank you for your time.
One comment or question?
Anybody have any questions?
Yes. If I might. On capital projects, some of the major capital projects aren't listed here. They're listed later on under some of the water and sewage projects, capital projects. They're not listed here. I just want to make sure that they're covered in some detail later because they represent significant amounts of money, more than the two that are listed here. And one of them, of necessity, since the preliminary studies haven't been done, have a big to be determined column next to it in terms of budget. And this relates to the potential projects for storm sewage drainage and also for the actual sewage pipes.
Correct. Okay, so we'll move, as we move on to these, and again, they are on the back side of the presentation. So we'll get into the more granular details once we get past this overview that we just discussed. We'll start jumping in here in a few minutes into the details that you have in your hand. So if we can go to the next slide. Again, this is just showing that this is the proposed millage rate. Again, it's decreased by 0.0119. And again, that's just for the decrease in the debt service millage. Next slide. This is our assessed value, basically $2.67 billion is our assessed value projected for next fiscal year. That's a 2.46% change. And 22.74 million in value has been added to the tax roll. Next slide. Again, this is our rate. Again, kind of going along with that, you'll see our rate is on par with what I would say the last 4, even 5 fiscal years. We really haven't had a significant change in our millage rate. So next year it's a 0.32% reduction. That's a very small fraction. I almost would say unnoticeable when you really take a look at the big picture. And then you'll see the debt service in the orange and the operating in the blue. Again, those numbers we just presented. Next slide.
Marshall, if I could add just one thing to the tax rate slide, just to note that the town has the 5th lowest aggregate tax rate in Palm Beach County.
And we would be maintaining that for sure. I mean, Manalapan is going to be tough to beat. They keep it pretty low. But we're basically right there in the bottom 2 or 3, 4 type millage rates. So, and I believe we'd still stay in that position moving forward because we're not recommending a change, but actually a decrease. So our position on tax rate would still be hold at one of the lowest rates in the county. Next slide. This is how they're divided. So when you do pay your taxes, 22% comes to Highland Beach to pay for services here in Highland Beach. The rest of your taxes are distributed 28% to Palm Beach County, 41% to Palm Beach County schools, and then 10% to districts, the special districts that we have. So we're getting less than a quarter of the total tax bill to maintain our operations. Next slide. Okay, here are our revenues. So we went through taking in the estimates provided by the property appraisers and then going through general cost increases or revenue increases that we see either set by contracts. So this is all of our total revenue for general fund. Again, this does not include water, sewer, or the building department. Those are either an enterprise, 2 enterprise funds, or a special revenue fund. We'll get to those in a minute. But again, you see about a 3.5% increase in revenues over the current fiscal year. Most of that growth, the new growth is ad valorem taxes, as we indicated. FP&L franchise fees are increasing. A little bit of an increase in administrative revenues and a little bit in the natural trash increase when we generate revenues there. And then again, at the bottom, you see the appropriation from reserves to fill the gap, if you will, to balance the budget. Again, this is the first presentation. This does lead us to our special meeting in a few weeks where we set the tentative maximum rate. And then we get into those budget hearings where we're really granular line item by line item. But those are our revenue streams. So we're going from basically 11.9 to $2.3 million.
Marshall, may I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Looking at the chart, correct me if I'm wrong, the percentages and all are comparing last year's budget to this year's budget, correct?
Yes.
So we're not in fact taking our year-to-date activity this year and projecting the last few months to see if that number is going to come in on the budget to make a comparison. In other words, if we're trending high or low in an area, how is that being taken into consideration in planning the new budget?
Sure. So we do have some projected figures through the year so far. And really, if you look at the red numbers you see, that's really indicative of Matt projecting off of the experience we're seeing, where we're seeing state revenue sharing is going to come down because that's based on tax collection from the state. So we're getting some estimates from the state and seeing what we plan to be seeing moving forward. The 1/2-cent sales tax, investment earnings, those items that were really based on some projections of where we're at to date and what we're experiencing, and then moving forward. On the expense side, there's some natural things that we're not spending money on. A lot of maybe training would be an item of the current projection budget. But we use those projection numbers to kind of ensure that what we're projecting or what we're using as the budget moving forward, we're using some projections internally and as well from the state, especially when it comes to the revenue sharing dollars. And that's going to be the items that will be experiencing the hit.
Thank you.
Next slide. Again, you can see the revenues. Again, we're pretty much relying on property tax is basically what is our lion's share of dollars. 81% of our general fund is the property taxes. And then you see the various other items. Franchise fees is the next big one, and administrative charges and solid waste. So, but again, predominantly property taxes. I thought I saw a hand. Did I see a hand? No. Okay, next slide. Again, then here's our budget based on, again, these are general fund expenses where you're looking at and what you're seeing as increases and decreases. And again, the biggest year-over-year increase that we're projecting is in the fire services. So here are the interfund transfers you see there. That's transferring funds collected under the debt millage over to the water fund to pay for the water debt that we currently have outstanding. So we collected under the general fund under the debt millage, and then we transfer that over to the water budget to balance the water budget to pay for the debt related to the water plan. We had a lot of those discussions. Matt will get into some of that a little bit later as it relates to the water and sewer study that's coming, that will be coming before you here shortly. So we're looking at all those items. And then you'll see the removal of the building department, again, based on state statute, that is now a special revenue fund. It has to be self-sufficient, and it can't pay for non-building department related expenses. So we have to account for that separate. Matt put it into a special revenue fund, and we'll get through those numbers in a minute. Next slide.
I have a question for you,
Sure.
Marshall. So before you had mentioned we had budgeted for, like last year, a 500,000 appropriation to reserves or from reserves, but then we ended up 200 in the other direction, right? What year did that take place? Was that 2020 or was that 2019? See where that 500 is, or even that 200 that you were talking about. Like, where is that?
So last year, for the current operating year we're in, we did not use $500,000 as a revenue gap. We raised the millage rate a touch, and we pledged, Matt, what was the number on reserves we pledged for the current operating year?
For 2020, it is zero.
Zero. Okay.
If you look at page 7, towards the bottom of page 7, you'll see just above the totals at the bottom of the page, a line called appropriation from reserves.
Oh yeah, we did zero last year.
We did zero last year. We're proposing 208,000 this year. And in actual figures for 2019, there was 698,000 proposed as part of the budget, but the actual amount used was zero.
Okay, so Marshall's opening comments about at some point we were projecting 500,000 coming from reserves, but it was
actually we were able to supplement our reserves from 200. Is that just not reflected in any of these charts anymore because it's updated for actual? Or am I missing something?
I'm not sure what you're speaking to, but we did.
When you open the discussion and we were talking.
Oh,
about-
yes. Okay. That's our net position from 19. We improved our net position by $552,000. So if you will, we added, when we closed out the audit from 19, we're in 20 fiscal year, the 19 fiscal year, when we closed that out, we added $152,000 to our reserves. So we really flipped, because that was the budget Matt just indicated, that the budget had initially proposed $698,000 to patch that budget. We not only didn't use any reserves, we added to the reserves by, if you will, managing our expenses a little bit better than initially projected. So
where does that 200,000, like, would that be in the, like, where would we see that amount that we?
CAFR.
No, the 200,000 from reserves you see on page 7 in the sort of light blue column. At the bottom of that column, just above the total, you'll see $208,325. That is the amount that is proposed for the 2021 proposed budget to include as a use of reserves.
It's in the general
Okay, but
fund
I
revenue
guess
line.
my question is about.
Correct.
My question is about the opening comment that Marshall had that said something to the effect of the original budget called for, and I'm not talking about 2021, I'm talking about, I think he was referring to 2020, where he said, we originally thought we were going to have to take 500 from the reserves, but we ended up adding 200 because actuals came in less than budgeted. And I guess I'm just wondering, where do we see that? Or
I'm not sure. I thought my opening remarks, I said we added 552.
Okay.
Year 19, we added the reserves, and that's the year that we kind of went from pledging all the way over to adding. So instead of using, we added to the reserves, and that's going to be in the presentation after this on the financial report, the CAFR, if you will. Matt will go through the audited results of that, whereby we improved our net position at the close of 19 by $552,000.
Okay, so that doesn't get reflected, like there's no line item for that in either of these two charts on page 7 or where it says general revenues and general expenditures. There's no items for that amount that you're talking about. I guess I'm having a hard time following all that.
Can I interject? I might be able to help you. If you go onto the general fund revenue with 2 back, that's what Matthew was saying, page 7, slide 7. Yeah. The year end 2020, the last item that says approximate or appropriate funds from reserve has 0 in 2020. Last year, if you look at the, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we looked at the budget last year, that would have had $598,000. We didn't use it, so for this presentation, they put it at 0 because we didn't need it. And next to it, the 208, that's what was talked about initially. What's in the budget for 2021? We had 598 last year, we didn't use it. This year, it's 208. So the way it's, just by adding and subtracting, it looks like it's a plus 208. Am I saying that right, Matthew? Is that correct?
Yes, but just to sort of frame it right in terms of the fiscal years, what Marshall was referring to in his opening statements was fiscal year 2019, which we now have the actuals for. That number as part of the budget at the bottom of the page there, for appropriation from reserves was originally 698,000 taken from reserves and pledged for use in the general fund. We ended up with a better than expected results, which led to no use of reserves and an addition to reserves for 2019. In 2020, there was $0 pledged from reserves and $0 we anticipate using. For 2021, next year, the proposed budget, we would propose using $208,000 out of reserves to avoid a millage increase. Or any
So, okay, so on page 9, then, I'm just to help me follow, where is that addition to reserves? Wouldn't there be a line item for that?
No, not a budgetary line item. That is an audit item.
Okay.
That's sort of the bottom line where revenues less expenditures led to 552,000 being added to reserves within the general.
Okay, so that's just not shown on line? Like, because it's only expenditures? I guess I just thought I would see a line item for that. So I was just wondering where that was. I mean, if you want to, I can follow up with you later.
It's approximately shown in the line. If you know, the revenues were higher than expenses in 19 as shown in here. But again, the final numbers were through the audit. So basically, if you look at, you know, total revenues in 19, it says basically 12.5, total expenses 12 million, give or take a couple percent. That basically shows that there was where the additions are, and the audit fine-tuned those actual numbers to show that we actually improved our net position, where we spent $552,000 less than we collected. So it is math. You could do it either off of the total general fund, or you could do it general fund minus building and revenue minus building, but it's approximately there. What I mean by that, this isn't an audited account for actuals in 19, but the auditors did do that, and that's what you. That's your net positional change. Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. I wonder if we should add that as a line item so that we can clearly see what was added. I don't know. It would help me, I think, and I don't know if it would help anyone else to kind of follow along all the numbers, because I didn't realize until now that the totals didn't really match, and so. You know, I wouldn't have thought to compare the totals and then think that the difference would have been added to surplus.
Yeah, so what I would say is we could add an approximate number in there to show, but again, a budget year is always followed up with the audit that actually does the fine last numbers that basically audits through all of that. So here we're showing probably a little bit more than 552, or right around 552 in separation. The audit, which is the follow-up document to the budget, shows you exactly where we closed out through the bank reconciliations, final payments, things of that nature. So the audit really shows that, what you're asking for, which is basically our audit team, basically an accounting firm comes in and checks the fine numbers. So basically the net position details are in the audit. But we can add it. We can add an approximate number in there to show that we came out ahead.
Yeah, we're very. Yeah, because we have an item for what we're taking from reserves. but we didn't just help people get comfortable with, you know, what we're doing, like how the numbers are flowing through.
Sure, we can add that. It's not a problem. So moving forward, if we off on slide 10, where we had expenditures and where you see where our major expenditures within our budget are. It pretty much holds true year to year, where fire takes about 39%, police about 21%, and then all the other departments kind of you'll see shown in there in the smaller pieces. The third largest is I think it's hard to see on here, but it's that green color, which is interfund transfers and moving things around that way. So again, police and fire is 60% of our budget. So when we really look at our budget, it's public safety kind of is the main cost. Next slide. Then we took those numbers and we broke it off by personal services. That's health insurance, salaries, overtime, all of those type of items are all tied up in the personal services. Operating expenses, what's important to see in operating expenses is the fire service contract is that it's a contract and it falls within the operating expenses. And then capital outlay is which self-explanatory, and then the transfers, which are basically that debt obligation in the water fund. So how they're broken down into those categories. Moving to slide 12, fund balance. Again, this kind of shows our health, our fiscal health, if you will, our unassigned fund balance. Let's go to the next slide. It kind of is a good picture. I think will drive the conversation. So basically, this is unassigned, meaning that it's not been defined by public policy positions, like our budget stabilization assignment. There's a natural disaster recovery assignment. But this is our unassigned fund balance. As you see, it has moved over the last 7 fiscal years from 37% all the way up to 52% where we're standing now. So I think that's what drove the conversation with the commission's comfort to use reserves to fill that gap, if you will, between the revenues and expenses, that we're climbing that percentage up again. That's why they were comfortable using reserves. But our position is solid. This is a conversation I've had with a couple of you and with some residents. You know, is 52% healthy? That is very healthy. It's exceptionally healthy. And I know we've had conversations in the past. What is a benchmark percentage? And we could do that work and begin to identify that as kind of a guidepost, if you will, in the budget conversations. But we're in really good position that we have 52% unassigned available for these uncertainties moving forward.
So Mark, can we go back to the prior slide?
Sure.
So as I was digging through this and getting more familiar with the budget and all that, so I guess in 2011, there was a standard that we adopted that we said that we look at the surplus that the town has and we assign it to these different categories. And so one of the categories is this disaster recovery. And so it was decided that 1/12 of our expenditures goes to disaster recovery. And then 2/12 goes to the budget stabilization. And I guess that's supposed to cover for like any cash flow issues. Like if there's a problem with cash flows, that's supposed to like timing of cash flows. So that's supposed to, yeah. So, and I kind of think of it in months of the year. 1 month of the year of the revenues that get 1/12 goes to disaster, 2/12, and then we have. I kind of think of that blue line, and I'm looking at the 2019 line, portion of that column, and that's unassigned. And I guess I was trying to think of different ways to kind of look at what this surplus is. And to me, it kind of represents like 6 months worth of expenditures or revenues is what that amounts to. And that's that, 50-something% that you're saying on the next slide that, represents what this represents. And and you were starting to make comments about that. I just have no idea if that, having 6 months worth of expenditures, if that is the right level of, unassigned surplus. We really have a total of 9 months. It's just 1 month goes to disaster and 2 months goes to the budget stabilization, which is, to plug any cash flow problems. And then 6 months that is unassigned. So I don't know if others have any input on whether or not, that level is appropriate or excessive or under, maybe we should have more. Just open it up for discussion.
I'll jump in then. Yeah, I mean, we again, I know we've had that conversation, you and I, wondering, what is the appropriate threshold? And it was also a conversation had by the commission. I believe Vice Mayor Bobby asked the same question, and maybe the FAB may want to consider, we're more than glad to do that, but maybe a recommendation that we begin to identify or benchmark our financial performance to make sure, are we well ahead of what was considered exceptional or good numbers? And what I mean by that is, I think the conversation I had, if you have unassigned between 25 and 35%, I'd always tell you to be more toward 35%. That's considered a pretty solid number to have. We're at 52. So, but I don't know, I know Matt would lead into this conversation. I'll steal a little of his thunder that because of us being in South Florida and more prone to hurricanes, yeah, we should definitely be leaning to the 35% or a little bit higher, recognizing that if a category 4 or 5 hurricane bear down, we'll have a lot of expense. So we could undertake a little bit of that work and maybe bring it back to the FAB if you are all comfortable, and we can maybe begin to, maybe not make it a hard policy, but maybe as kind of like some guideposts for the commission and the FAB moving forward, that here's kind of where we should be keeping our eye on certain numbers, like the unassigned. Is it starting to get too high, or are we in the appropriate place? And then maybe benchmark ourselves to similarly situated communities in South Florida, so we know where that is. I bet you we'll find ourselves in pretty good company, that we're in a strong fiscal place right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. At some point, someone decided 2 months worth was what the budget stabilization, amount should be. And along the way, someone decided 1 month's worth was for the disaster. So I imagine we could come up with how many months we think or percentage is good for, a target unassigned. And it's not that we can't go above it, or, like you said, it would just be a guidepost, a more thought out, position, we want to be in, as opposed to just, keep throwing, saving money or putting money there, and we don't know, if it's really necessary or not, or maybe we are, it's shortfall. So I think that would be prudent to do.
Quick question, Matt, how close are we to fully funding the disaster fund?
We are at the cap underneath the town's adopted fund balance policy is 8.3%, or basically 1 month's worth of operating expenses. We are at that level for fiscal year 21.
Thank you.
Fiscal 19 based on the audited figures. So there'd be no further increases. If I could give a little more background on that 2-month mark for budget stabilization. One of the reasons that is the assigned amount for budget stabilization is that the town does not receive property tax revenues until after tax bills are sent out after they're due, which is they are sent out on November 1st, and the first due date or the first discount period begins December 1st. So basically the town has 2 months where we don't receive any significant property tax revenue at all. So that 2-month reserve ensures that we flow during the first 2 months of the fiscal year before property tax revenues are received.
And have we ever come close, you know, is that inadequate? Like, you think we miss that at 12%, or it seems adequate?
I'm sorry, if that was a question, your audio was a little garbled.
Oh, it is? Okay, sorry about that. Can you, I don't know if you can hear me now. I guess my just question is that 2/12, has that been adequate over time? Have we ever come?
That is in public finance, that's sort of one of those rules of thumb to
Okay.
2 months of reserves on hand. That is sort of government finance officers recommended best practice to have that as a minimum amount.
Okay. So is there a similar standard for the unassigned?
Unassigned would also be in that same sort of target range of 2 months.
So an additional 2 months?
Well, it's nice to have that budget stables. I would say you'll find many jurisdictions around South Florida who are lucky if they have a reserve that is about 17%, which would be 2 months worth of expenditures.
So they don't have an additional unassigned, and they don't have.
I would, it's going to vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but some of our more financially challenged municipal colleagues wish that they were in the position that I mean, they aren't seeing anything like 52% unassigned fund balance within their general fund. I mean, you'll find a good number that are probably between 10 to 15% or lower.
When Greg looked at all the municipalities, I thought he mentioned we were like the 4th highest or something, in the top 5.
Yeah. In comparison to others, we are definitely an outlier on the good side in financial strength.
And the question is, do we really, you know, it's the old story of we're keeping everybody's money
Right.
for no good reason.
Right.
Well,
that's why I'm not opposed personally to, you know, you're balancing the budget, a couple $100,000 here and there. I mean, against a $12 million budget is peanuts. And you're, you know, so you're taking $200,000 of reserves. Who cares?
Right.
And it's not even half of what was added in the most recent fiscal year.
Right.
So we don't yet know, right, for 2020, like what that will be, right? Right now.
Our projection at this point is that we end the year in pretty solid financial position due to primarily 2 one-time events. One of them is a one-time payment from Waste Management that came with as a result of them causing some damage to roadways within the town. And the other is $109,000 coming from the true-up process where the actual results of the 2019 fire rescue budget versus the budget led to the city of Delray Beach paying the town $109,000, returning those funds to the town as part of the fire rescue contract. So those two events somewhat negated and offset by the effects of COVID-19 on the economy in terms of drop in sales tax, drop in state revenue sharing, and a significant decrease in interest earnings, where the returns and the interest earnings and the interest we are earning now are probably about 1/2 of where we were at just about 4 or 5 months ago. So taking all those things into account, we do still expect to end fiscal year 20, the current year, in a positive position.
So we'll probably be adding a little bit to the surplus.
Yes, we are likely to add in the vicinity of 150,000 to maybe 250,000 to reserves at the end of fiscal 20. But there's still an awful lot of questions out there in that regard in terms of, is there any economic bounce back? How much will interest rates change? I don't think there's any great expectation regarding interest rates changes in the short term. If there is some economic bounce back, we would expect sales tax numbers to increase corresponding. But as it stands right now, we do expect to end the year, as I said, in a positive net position.
Okay. So this might go up a little, a tick mark.
A bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Marshall, can we continue, please?
Sure, we're on to slide 14. This is where we're going to get into the building department. Again, as I'd indicated, state statute requires the building fund to be self-sufficient and those funds not to be utilized for non-building department related costs. So what you have here is we took the actuals from 19 to kind of show you how they're progressing. We have a balance current for this year, and then next year we're balanced, and we're projecting they'll probably put a few dollars into reserves, but that's a good thing, so they can begin to develop a little bit of reserve fund for the building department. So if construction really slows down, they have dollars to handle these slowdown periods. Additionally, the reason why they have that statute in is to make sure our building department fees aren't collecting significantly more dollars than it costs to deliver the service, which would then drive us to reduce our fees. So it's a two-way street, and we kind of keep an eye on this because we're officially putting it into this category as a special revenue fund. And then moving forward each fiscal year, we'll be able to look at the reserves or lack thereof to determine where we go. So, and you'll see there's some transfers from the general fund. What that does is that covers certain parts of the building department operation that can't be expensed as a building department cost, basically planning. So basically we have half of our town planner, half of her time is spent doing development review, which is directly with the building department. The other half is more true planning. So we transfer money, if you will, from the general fund to cover the cost of the planner. Yet at the same time, the building department transfers out money to us to cover like overhead costs and charges, if you will, for maintaining that space. So if they're going to operate as an independent fund, similar to water and sewer, where they transfer administrative charges back to us, think of rent, management oversight, commission time, things of that nature. They transfer dollars back out to us, but they'll balance. 19, they had a really big year on revenue, and we're projecting a similar trend, maybe not as good as 19, but we're expecting a continuance of relatively solid construction forecasts moving forward. And again, you'll see a lot of that is with buildings. Some of you in the room understand when your buildings go under these significant projects, you know, there's a lot of construction that goes on being on an ocean front. So there's kind of a stabilizing factor that every year we will have some significant level of projects available in the community that kind of generates that revenue to support the building department based on true need to make sure we're watching it for the Florida Building Code. Next slide. Discretionary sales surtax. This is the penny tax, county penny tax that comes in for capital projects. As you can see, some of the footnotes in here, 2020, we spent some money on engineering for consulting and construction of the crosswalks, some town hall renovations. For those that may be watching and experienced the sign issue we had earlier in the week, we have a sign replacement program going. So we'll replace the town signs. Those are active projects currently going on. Crosswalks, like I said, is in a holding pattern. One, we didn't get the appropriation request. We almost got it from the state, but COVID-19 kind of took us out of the running for that. And we will be making, based on Tuesday's meeting with the commission, we're going to ask again. But we're also looking at an owner furnished type project model to see what that would look like. So crosswalks are still going. We just got a little bit of a delay, one, because the bids came in so high earlier in the year and we didn't get the appropriation request. So we're kind of rethinking crosswalks a little bit, but it's not been removed as a priority. So it's still there. We're just looking at a few different things. And then we put a new roof for town hall and then again, the continuation of the crosswalks next year. Next slide. Water fund. Again, this is the water enterprise fund. You can see, you know, kind of a reduction in revenues.
Excuse me, Marshall, I had my phone on mute because there's construction going on above us. I apologize when it starts again. Can you just go back to your slide before for a second?
Sure.
Is this being impacted by business being way down because of COVID? Retail business, is that why the budget is much higher? Well, yeah, in this slide, you do have a year-end projection. Now, can you explain, is that based on actual to date and what you expect to do for the rest of the year? That's one question. And is it lower than 19, significantly lower because you took into account the retail sales? That's the discretionary sales tax based on retail sales in Palm Beach County. So is that what I see? Am I correct in my statement?
Yeah, you are exactly correct. If you look to the projection for fiscal year 2020, you'll see about a 20% drop off over or under rather fiscal year 20 budget. So we are expecting at least about a 20% drop off in sales tax revenue, and that portion that gets allocated through the 1 penny discretionary sales surtax. Carrying forward for most of 2021.
Was that taken into consideration the sales tax reduction we get from Palm Beach also, besides the discretionary in our budget?
Yes,
here?
they're basically one part of the same number. The sales tax money that we get is done by formula. It's basically our share of 1/2 of 1 cent. And that gets distributed between the county and the various municipalities within Palm Beach County.
That's besides the discretionary, which I saw 1/2, 1% in the revenue slide.
Right, so that's a 1% sales surtax, and that is also distributed between the school board, the county, and the municipalities.
We only get 1/2 of 1%. Yeah, in the general fund revenue, the 1/2 sales tax, that's what we get from Palm Beach County, 1/2, 1%. Okay, yeah, we're a small town. Okay, I got it. All right, thanks.
Okay, water budget, water enterprise and sewer enterprise are the next 2 slides. The caveat that I would carry over that is the 5-year water and sewer rate study that we do every year. That is in the works. Matt has indicated probably the next 4 to 6 weeks, we should have some final products to begin to share with the FAB and the commission on how do we want to look at our water rates here in Highland Beach. And again, I just want to remind everybody from our conversations we had last year that kind of started was, do we begin to contemplate moving debt costs from the general fund debt millage to the water and sewer rates, what percentage that is. And then we also, do the rates truly reflect gathering enough dollars for capital improvements moving forward, looking at our capital project needs over the next 5 to 10 years, are our rates appropriate? So there is a study going on that will look at those items and you'll be able to get into a discussion. So what you're looking at here with these water and sewer enterprise budgets is what is currently in the study, which is a 3% increase on each side, on the water side and the sewer side, pursuant to the 2018 study that goes through this year. So that's what you'll see in this budget, is continuing that trend of 3% year over year increases. Now, I know that there's interest on the commission, and the FAB has expressed interest in before to take a closer look at that to make sure our water rates are appropriate for our needs, one, accounting for some debt, and then also the capital needs moving forward. And are the rates equitable as well? So all that stuff will be handled in the rate study, but that conversation is moving forward as we speak. So if you look at the water year over year, basically holding it pretty flat, the numbers. So we're pretty much holding true to our projections. And if we go over to the sewer budget, it's the same thing. You know, year over year, holding pretty steady. Just some changes in reduction in capital. That's why it's just the number of $142,000 reduction. We had to make some capital changes, so the capital needs under sewer are a little bit less than they were this year. So it's just a natural cycle where some years will be bigger than others. Next year is a lower year for our capital needs. Is well planned for some of this uncertainty we're looking at, that we have a light year in the capital needs side of it. Now, that being said, going back to Mr. Greenwald, Dr. Greenwald's comments, yes, we have unknown that has to be considered in the capital budget, because we're currently, hopefully in the next, 2 to 4 weeks, we'll be having our contractor go out and televise our entire sanitary sewer system. And that is predicated on some of the conditions we've seen on our repairs, that it's about time we take a look at that last piece of aged infrastructure that's at times 40 years old, sometimes a little bit older. Some pipes are clay. We have a whole hodgepodge, if you will, of pipes under the ground over the years. So we're evaluating those conditions, and if a larger project lining and or replacement type project in some scope exists or is needed based on those results. So as we get into the later slides on capital projects, you see that to be determined, because we just don't know what that is. My guess is that we're going to need some type of project based on that age, and that the pipes are sitting in, some salt conditions, the salinity conditions in the soil. So we'll probably be looking at a sewer project in some scale. We just don't know what. So if you will, put a pin in it, because we're going to have to revisit that project as we move forward. The next slide.
Marshall, can we go back to the Water Enterprise Fund for a second?
Sure.
The debt service, actual 2019 was 310, budgeted for 2020, 1,549,000, and you're budgeting again 1,549,000. We must have talked about this last year, why the debt service was going to go up. Can you review that? Why is the increase from 310 to 1549?
That's really getting into sort of, for lack of a better phrase, sort of esoteric accounting issue, because they only recognize the reduction in capital. The debt service interest expense is just treated as an expense. That's only showing for technical accounting purposes in the financials, which is what fiscal 19 actuals represent, is just a reduction in principal as opposed to the interest expense, which is on.
Yeah, it's, I'm trying to follow it because this is a debt, it's called debt service. And does that have to do with the major project we did 2 years ago?
Well, I mean, the actual dollars spent have been pretty level. The actual dollars spent for both principal and interest are total of about 1.5 million every year, 1.55 million. That's pretty flat for the next several years. What you're seeing there is just what is reported in the financial statements. If you look at page 16 of the CAFR, you will see that interest expense of $310,599.
Yeah, that's what I imagine. That's what I
It doesn't
see.
show the reduction in principal cost.
But the 1,549,000 represents principal and interest.
Correct.
So it's
So in the actual column, you're only going to see the interest expense, not the reduction in long-term liabilities, because that's simply recorded as a liability in the financial statements and is shown as a change in liability in the financial statements.
well, I understand enterprise
As an
fund
expense.
doesn't, yeah. I understand the word enterprise fund doesn't necessarily match with financial accounting for P&L purposes.
Correct.
I'm having a problem. And you're saying if you look at if you had a 9 month or in July, if you had anything through the end of 9 months, which would be June, you would see 75% of 1,549,000.
Not exactly, just due to the timing of the payments. There is one loan which is on a June and December payments or payments made semi-annually, and the 4 other loans are March and September. So we do have a pretty sizable payment of debt service within the water fund.
So you do this on
September.
you do this on a cash basis, on an accrual basis. So when it hits, you hit your.
Well, the 2019 figures are actuals.
Yeah. Okay, for the year.
The actual, but if you were to look at the current year budget, you would see that there is still some significant payments to be made, as a number of them are scheduled in September.
And that's principal and interest.
Correct.
There should be a better way of showing this, maybe 2 lines. For one is for debt service interest and one for the capital payments in this, because the numbers are large and it's something, it's a major. Now I'm going back to maybe the water fund expenditures for the pipe project we did to the side streets a couple of years ago. I think it was a $5 million project. Is that in there?
Well, that isn't the related debt service expense in terms of interest is included in there, but the payments of principal are recorded as a change in liability.
Right.
They're recorded as an expense within the water fund.
Yeah, that's the point I'm making, but you seem to be showing both here, because I'm sure interest for 1 year was not 1,500,000. I'm sure principal wasn't 1,500,000 either. I think that the debt was a $5 million amount that was added to a Florida state loan we had. I don't recall exactly how we paid for that project, but it was more.
It was a loan from the state revolving loan fund.
Right.
4 of our 5 loans are structured that way, and the other loan is through a promissory note with Bank of America.
Right. So that should be spread out. I'd like to understand what that 1,949,000 represents. I assume we're going at year end, September 30th, 2020. The number will be 1,549,000. And the budget
Cash out the door,
it's fixed.
in terms of cash out the door at the end of the current fiscal year, that is correct. It'll be about 1.55.
Really?
million that will have been spent.
Huh. Okay.
Split between interest expense of roughly $300,000 and a reduction
In the note.
principal outstanding, which is shown in our financial statements as a reduction in long-term liability of about 1.2 million.
Was it a 5-year note? I don't remember. I really don't recall. I don't know if anybody else was around at that time. David? Okay, I'm not questioning, I'm questioning what it represents, not questioning the accuracy of it. The presentation's bothering me, but not the number itself. But I'm sure that, I shouldn't say I'm sure, I don't recall the details. All I know is $5 million, and we borrowed from Florida, and I don't believe it could have been a 5-year note.
I believe most of the debt is 20-year debt.
Yeah.
For the water plant and for the components of the water plant.
Yeah, most of it is water plant. I know that. Most of the debt is for water.
All of our debt is related to the water.
Oh, so this is all the debt.
All of it.
All the $9 million we have in debt is for the water plant.
Yeah, it's a little more than 9 at the end of fiscal 19.
Well, in the audited statements, it was $9 million and change. I think I could be wrong, but it's $9 million. Well, I don't want to go in and find it, but it's not necessary. I'm just looking at the presentation. Debt service, in my mind, is interest, and that's principal and interest. Okay.
Hey, Marshall, can we move along from?
Yeah, I think we should move along at this point. Okay.
Sure. We'll go back to slide 18. We see the unrestricted net position in the enterprise funds, relatively on par with, that's at the end of close of 19, which you'll also see in your CAFR, is holding consistent, a little bit of increase on both sides, water and sewer. Moving to the 2021 capital project, slide 19, you'll see a series of projects that are proposed within the budget. And again, the key to look at this table is to look at the fund that is funding it. So there's some carpet replacement we need in the Public Works Building Department area. So the building department would pay its share to do that. So that's why you see $25,000 capital project out of the building special revenue fund. Discretionary sales tax, you have the continuation of crosswalks and town roof. Out of the sewer fund, sewer enterprise fund, you see the rehab of Station 1, sewer laterals and linings, that's the to be determined. We just don't know the condition. We have a system rehab phase 1, and then we have a couple of stormwater projects at 25 grand there. Then into the water side of things, we replace the other chiller where we just approved the chiller just now. So there's 2 chillers that cool the building. So we replace the other one next year. Some chemical day tanks, shallow injection wells have to be repaired. And then the Public Works water plant cost on the carpet to match with the building department. And then you'll see at the bottom, it says potential additions. Don't worry about that number. The commission took care of that. And we'll be at the next regular meeting discussing something, an appropriately designed and costed signs at the north and south end of town. So I put in a big number to stir a conversation. They were quick to take that number into more of the appropriate realm and have something that's a slightly understated sign that still looks nice, and they will be having that conversation. So there will be an additional capital project, but it will be significantly less than that number. So you can go ahead and disregard that. And the next time we'll meet, we'll show you the more appropriate number and project that goes through that. Next. Again, these are our major initiatives moving forward next year, kind of completing that crosswalk project. Again, for those that are watching, it has not fallen off the radar screen. It just took a little different turn, and we're trying to regain control of that project and see how we can deliver it in a cost-effective manner. Strategic planning initiatives, we're working on that now to kind of the next component of the strategic budgeting process or strategic thinking process we're trying to integrate into this organization and into our process. We're looking at the sanitary sewer system to see what condition it truly is in and what kind of projects we need to take to maintain those assets. And then the ever much needed enterprise resource planning system, or basically an IT infrastructure, a software package to handle finance, building, payroll, timesheets, accounts payable, receivables, utility billing, all that. We had a whole new system, because when you look at the audit comments, the auditors really were taken back by the poor condition of our current system. But that's why we got the commission to approve that last year and got the FAB support last year to put that in place. And we are moving forward with that project. We did award a contract to BS&A, and we have a kickoff meeting tomorrow, and we'll be moving over the next 6 to 9 month implementation process. And then when I get calls that you want financial reports and this and that, I can give it to you in a moment's notice versus the current cumbersome process that takes days to pour through multiple systems to see where we're going, and handling transactions 3 different ways to do it. So we're going to be speeding that entire process up. So we're excited. I know Matt and his team are very excited to catch up to the current century on software package. So we'll get that in place.
I have a question for Matthew. If on that, what's the cost on it? How's it going to be accounted for?
The cost
BSS.
is, the cost is being allocated, a portion to the general fund, a portion to the building department fund for the permitting process, and a portion to the water fund for the utility billing module. All total, I believe the number is approximately 125,000.
We're paying, or is it being leased?
We are paying.
Paying for it up front. And what's going to be annual carrying costs? What are you going to charge for service?
It's about $9 grand
Yes.
for all of it.
not
Currently,
reasonable.
we spend probably 3 times that a month with these hobbled systems that we currently have. We pay significantly more than that. So we'll be, the cost benefit analysis is quite quick to get us caught up on
That's,
just for all these other random systems we have.
nobody has to defend that to me. I understand what Matthew goes through. I'm sure you're gonna lose all your hair. Excuse me, there you go.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a pleasure to get it in. Oh, so you're buying it, and about 9,000 a year, you said? Or a month?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
After the first year, there's no payment the first year. So after they implement, probably in the winter, it was 12 months until we have to pay. So the first year is included in the implementation. So basically, you don't have any additional costs for about 24 months from contract signing.
Just to get the conversion programs, did you work with them on that, so you know how they're going to help you convert? Otherwise, you'll be here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So make sure that doesn't happen. That's it.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've done that, so I know what you're up against.
Yep. So they're working on that now and pulling all the data together. Our IT consultant has already built the virtual platform to handle the virtual machine to handle all of BS&A, and then we're going to start converting data probably next week. Each week we pick big chunks and convert it over. So yes, I'm with you. It could be time consuming if not done properly, for sure.
Oh, yes. You don't want to lose control in the conversion. Very important.
And then the next slide is basically the calendar of events. So basically the next meeting on the budget schedule will be July 21st to set the tentative maximum date. And then August 6th and 13th are the budget workshops on each of these budgets, where the commission will look at line items to see if there's any fine tuning, and hopefully we'll get some clarity on fire costs, any other additional capital projects that need to be brought in as we move forward. And sometime in that process too, we'll start looking at the water and sewer rate study with you all, and we'll kind of define that. And then in September 8th and 22nd, we have our public hearings to adopt the final budget. That'll be this budget that you looked at here with some final little tweaks here and there. So with that is the budget presentation. That's kind of I would say 40,000 foot view, but you guys did a good job jumping into detail. So you probably are a little bit closer to the actual of it. So, and as we move forward, we'll keep you guys in the loop, give you copies of everything. If anything jumps off the plate, just let us know so we can bring that into discussion as we move forward.
Thank you.
Excuse
Thank
me.
you. Yeah.
Just one question on the scheduled meeting list.
Yes, sir.
I didn't see anything else about this group meeting before the final budget approval by the town commission. Is that indeed the case?
There- Let me jump in on this. The only thing on the schedule, which we'll get to, was a July 23rd meeting, which was probably not going to be necessary, but we have to reach out because indeed we do have to schedule something as soon as we have the appropriate information. So my thought would be when I get from Matt and the information and that we can try to schedule a meeting at the appropriate time.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I think we need an opportunity to be able to formulate whatever actual advice, recommendations, whatever you might call it, for the town commission.
I would agree. I would totally agree with that. Marshall, does that make sense?
So you guys are looking, you want to look at this before we get to public hearing is what I'm hearing. Is that correct statement?
Yes, I think if we can do that, that would be appropriate.
When does the budget have to be approved? Is there a date?
Well, September 8 is really where we get into full adoption. What I would recommend we could do is we do have the 20th date is kind of an optional. So unless something goes haywire, we might look at maybe plugging the FAB into a budget workshop or the FAB final budget review type concept where we can bring the results back from the commission's workshops to say, this is pretty much the budget. And then if there's any, you want to take one last look at it to make sure, another set of eyes, if you will, on all the financial matters, that would be a good time to do that.
Okay, and then you're looking for when on that, Marshall?
August 20th.
Okay. I think that makes sense, and I think we'll, if the town can get a note out for availability of the board, I think if we can get a quorum, I think would be appropriate.
Yep, we can do that. I see Janelle shaking her head, so she's got that note to make sure we poll everybody and see if that date's available. And we'll do it Zoom or maybe we'll be in person. Who knows?
I would shoot for 3 o'clock. We're supposed to be at normal meetings. We can do that, or a little earlier if it's appropriate. But since we've scheduled the meetings going forward at 3, let's see if everybody's available at that time. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the comprehensive annual financial report. And again, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Hello. Included in the agenda package, which you got for this meeting, was a copy of the town's fiscal 19 comprehensive annual financial report. I don't have much to say on this. It's mostly good news. The town is in excellent financial position. We got a clean audit from the town's auditor, Ground Associates. We had an increase townwide in net position of $330,000. That's basically assets exceeding liabilities by that amount. We have, as Marshall mentioned earlier, unassigned fund balance within the town's general fund increased by $552,000 to $6.1 million. And as he mentioned, that represents 52% of the general fund expenditures and transfers out. In addition to the unassigned portion, we have 1.97 million for budget stabilization, which is equal to 16.7% of general fund expenditures and transfers out, and a assigned amount for disaster recovery equal to about just under $1 million, equal to 8.3% of general fund expenditures and transfers out. I'd be happy, that's about all I have in terms of highlights. I'd be happy to try and address any specific questions you may have.
Does anybody have a question?
I have one question. I didn't see it. Usually if there are any specific audit adjustments, they would state it. Either I fell asleep reading it, I didn't see it, or it wasn't. Any, other than the one you were talking about the $330,000, was there any significant audit adjustments brought to your attention?
None that were, not standard sort of adjustments. We are always, due to the timing of when we receive certain revenue sources, things like payments from the state for half-cent sales tax and things of that nature, we receive them about a month after the period which they're attributable to. So sales tax related to the month of September of 2019 is received in October of 2019, the next fiscal year. So that kind of thing is, as a matter of course, accrued back.
Well, those are standard things. I'm saying they came to you, they found an error. I'm sure that hasn't
No,
happened.
there was nothing significant in that manner.
And did you have any more discussions with them, I've been saying for a couple of years, to accelerate their sign off? Can we get the audit done quicker? Because
Well,
by the time
part
we
of
get it, my comment every year is by the time we get it, we're 5-6 months into the year, the numbers are stale. So how do we get it to 3 months?
Well,
From 6 months, 5 months.
we should do better next year. The past 2 years have been hampered by vacancies. When I first came here, the finance director position had been vacant for about a 3-month period, right at fiscal year end, at the end of fiscal year 2018. And this most recent cycle for fiscal 19, the deputy finance director position was vacant for about another 3-month period. At the end of this current fiscal year, it's going to be hard for us to deliver financial statements in a timely manner when one of 2 people is gone from the office.
That's agreed, that's internal, but there was always discussion on getting the calculation for the pension calculation. Always takes a lot of time after the end of the year. There are reasons for it, but
well,
as I said,
even if we have everything bundled up as quickly as we could possibly do it, you still have to wait until getting numbers from FRS, the retirement system, and those generally aren't available until at least January. So there's no way that we could get the financial statements done in advance of 4 months past the end of the fiscal year.
no, I understand all the things, but if you get together with the auditors and work out a plan to try to shave something off, because their opinion was signed June 30th. That's 6 months
Yes.
after the end of the year.
Yes.
And then you look at the financial statements, already 6 months old. So that's the point. We're lucky
No, I
and
understand.
fortunate that we've had no, as I say, major adjustments at year end. We know that 80%, as I commented earlier, is payroll, our operating expenses. So that's easy to know what it is and what it costs us. So there's nothing that could pop up that would be a surprise, bring us to the knees type of adjustment that would happen in this town. I don't think so. All I'm trying to indicate is 6 months after the end to know that your numbers are good, even though I know they are. I think what would help us though is to start, I know it's been COVID affected, though we haven't gotten monthly financials now for three months. So that we get those regularly and you sign off that this is based on the best of your knowledge, where we are, that would take a lot of pressure off us or yourself at the end of the year when you have to do an audit, knowing that the numbers are good. There's nothing going to come out at year end that would plus or minus, that we could rely on you and your staff of doing a good job during the year. I have no problem with that at all. It's just a 6 month gap is a long time to wait for an auditor to sign off. It's I think I could have recorded that. How many years I'm on the board now? 6 years. So I've said it for 6 years, not 3 or 4. So it is what it is.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions on this item? All right, moving along to item F, Financial Department update. Matt, do you have any additional update?
Just a few things to mention. as Marshall mentioned, we have a kickoff meeting tomorrow with BSNA on the ERP implementation. We anticipate implementing that over the next several months with a cut over to the new system on April 1st of 2021. As part of the fiscal year 20 budget, there was a part-time position included for the finance department. Marshall had requested that we're finding that part-time position is not enough, and he asked for, and at mid-year, our commission approved the conversion of that to a full-time position, and that will carry over into fiscal 2021. That is a position that primarily works on things like utility billing and accounts payable and making sure our vendors get paid. We do apologize for being a bit behind on the monthly financials. COVID-19 has made everything a lot more cumbersome, but we do expect to catch up in the next several weeks and get you a number of months of information to you in the next several weeks.
Thank you. One comment, maybe you can update the rest of the board. I think the vice mayor made a very good presentation on our debt service, what percent we're paying, which I think the rest of the board here ought to know that. I think we're doing pretty well in that area. And I think if you can just outline that very briefly.
Just one moment.
While he looks, I can tell you for the most part, it's under 2%, and which is a pretty good number.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to send around to all the members of the Financial Advisory Board the email that I shared with Vice Mayor Bobby, which summarized our debt and basically went over the details that he provided at the most recent commission meeting. The reason that we started looking at the debt here was that there was a concern expressed that there might be a refunding opportunity that we're missing out on. And unfortunately, one portion of our debt, the promissory note with Bank of America, has what is called a make whole provision, which means that the note holder, which is Bank of America, if we were to do a refinancing, they would basically capture all of the savings. The bondholder would be made whole by any refinancing which took place. That loan is at about 3.41%.
Am I correct that all the other loans are below 2% or below?
We have our SRF loans. We have one, the largest of which outstanding right now is at 1.18%. There's two other loans, one of about 800,000, the other of about 3 million, which are at 2.61 and 2.82%. The highest interest rate we have on our SRF loans is 3.82%, but that loan only has about 4 more years left on it. At this point, it's like your home mortgage. When you get to the end of a mortgage, you're primarily principal, not paying much interest. There's not a great deal of interest left out on that. So with only 4 years left on it, even though it is at 3.82%, and there might be some potential savings, there's really not much interest part of that loan anymore as a result of nearing the end of its final maturity. But I will be happy to share the information that was shared with Vice Mayor Bobby with the FAB.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, we'll go to board member reports. Does anybody on the board have a report to give? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, thank you. And excuse me.
I made my report. I am leaving the board after 6 years, being forced to. They're throwing me out by reg. I have to stay off 1 year and then try to get back on if there's an opening next year, which I'll try if they want me. If not, so be it. It's been a good 6 years. My only negative comment, I think we were underutilized sometime in the past, but I think at this point we will look up to. I think we have excellent members at this time, and I will be involved in the budgeting process till I think my last official day is September 20th. So I'll be at the next meeting and if needed before then. But I enjoyed it and I hope to come back after I take my 1 year sabbatical.
And we all thank you. And again, you stole my last comments, but thank you. I appreciate it. That's great. Okay, just any other reports? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the announcements. A virtual town code enforcement board meeting on July 14th at 2 p.m. Virtual town commission meeting July 21st at 1:30. And we just took off the agenda the meeting for this board and I'm moving it to August 20th if we can get a quorum. We know if there further business, I would like a motion to adjourn.
All right. Can I have
All in favor?
just one question?
Sure.
What involvement will in the fire issue, the fire department issue, if any?
Yeah, so there'll be other meetings outside of a budget meeting that you guys are suggesting is necessary. I believe the audited results or the outcomes of a contract review would come back to the FAP for review and opinion. I believe the same thing with the water and sewer rate study will come back to the FAB for review and opinion. So all those items as they come forth will be returning to this group for review and opinion, especially as it relates to the financial affairs implicated by that. So I think all those things are coming. I just don't have exact dates yet. And we will be sure when they do become available. One, we'll at least get you copies and then we'll figure out how to get a meeting or when we get a meeting to have that public discussion and all of you together to discuss it. So it's coming. I just don't have the exact dates. I don't want to commit to anything that just yet.
And, yeah, it is appropriate, and I'm sure you'll have all of our input. And I'd like to thank Marshall, Matt, for all of their reports and input, and everybody on the board for some great questions. So thanks a lot, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.